We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications options. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright when the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us break. What's that you said coming over you? You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. It is a pre-recorded show and I'm delighted to welcome my good friend Steve Hasty for an Ask Hastie session, and it's me asking the questions. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, good to see you, mate. And as always, plenty to talk about as far as Newcastle United's concerned. But I want to start the way that I started, other podcasts like this in the last week or so by just giving the chance for the viewers to learn a little bit more about you, because people just know us as the people who come on and talk about Newcastle United. They don't really know a great deal about us as people, some more than others, I guess. But I guess just work-wise, Steve, what did you do? What do you do? And whatever you want to share with us. What kind of jobs have you been involved in the past?
Oh dear me, Steve, where do we start? Like most kids in the sort of mid to late 70s, you had a summer job or you had a part-time job. You delivered newspapers and that type of thing. But the first sort of job that I had was working as a petrol pump attendant, believe it or not. In those days, Steve, people used to get the petrol put in by somebody. I worked at the garage up at the Falling Ends throughout the summer of, I think it was 75 and 76. And it was great. I only did the weekends, but you were actually, believe it or not, you were on duty on your own in the petrol station. It had a showroom in front or at the back of it, and little pumps at the front. But I was the only one there. Used to do a 12-hour shift, so like 6 in the morning till 6 at night on a Saturday and Sunday in the summer. Wasn't bad at all. I mean, the responsibility that they gave you was ridiculous when you think about it. But I did that as a summer job, and then in 78, I left school in 78, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, some of my pals went into the yards, some of them went to Parsons in engineering and draftsmanships and this type of thing, and that really wasn't my cup of tea. That wasn't what I was interested in. I didn't really know what I was interested in, perfectly honest. And a friend of mine, his mum said, "Oh, they're advertising for staff at the ministry." And I mean, I knew the ministry quite well simply because my school was right next door to it. So I used to see all these people filing in and out. I had no clue what any of them did, by the way. So I applied, thought, well, it's nothing to lose. And in the interim, I started, because I was toying with sort of retail management. I fancied getting into working in store management and that type of thing. I thought maybe that was a good opportunity. And I was working at Bainbridge's, believe it or not, in Eldon Square. But I got the opportunity of an interview at the ministry, and basically it was an extra £5 a week. So I went to the ministry instead. It was £28.50 at Bainbridge's, and I think it was 30 odd quid at the ministry. I thought I'll jump at that. That's another night out. So I went there. The plan was to stay a year. Worked in the pensions department, got trained up and worked as a clerical officer. Did that for quite a number of years, got promoted, and moved into staff training there. Worked there for probably another 7 or 8 years in staff training, and then moved around various departments. And the good thing about the ministry at the time was you could, if the opportunity arose, you could jump at it and you could get involved in all sorts of different aspects of how can I put it, not just clerical but administrative and policy making and all sorts. I travelled down to the policy division in London. I used to work out the Millbank Tower now and again in London. Then I went to child support. I worked on the project, was setting that up, and after that had gone wrong, I was part of a hit squad that travelled the country trying to put it right for everybody. So that was good. Worked on the start of the new computerisation at Long Benton. That would have been sort of the late 90s. But it got the point after 20 years. I thought, you know what, if I keep doing this for another 20 years, I might go mad. And my brother was wanting to do something different. So we had a little bit of money behind when we set up a printing business. Digital printing was just starting at the time, and he was very much into that, and he was looking for someone to help and support him. So we started with a digital printing firm. We did banners and backdrops, worked for companies like Laura Ashley and stuff like that. And then a guy knocked on the door one day and said, "Can you print onto a mobile phone cover?" And I said, my brother said, "Well, think about that. Can you come back? We'll let you know." So we hummed and hawed, and 6 months later, we got back in touch with him after doing 6 months of solid graft. And we prototyped a method of printing to print and wrap around the old Nokia 3110 phone covers and 5110. Well, 5110s first. Cut a long story short, we ended up with a huge big factory in Stanley. There 170 odd people working 3 shifts, and we were part of the team that basically set that up. Great time. And then 2003, I thought, back end of 2002, I think I've had enough of this now. And we got back into working for ourselves again, printing. I took a bit of a hiatus, took a bit of a break, and then got back into that game around about 2011, 2012. But what we wanted to do was something slightly different. So we started making ink. We started manufacturing the ink that we were using. Got into that for a while. That was great. Thoroughly enjoyed that. So my background is very much into I was more like a business analyst type of thing. That's what I was good at.
Yeah.
Analyzing situations and things like that, and then developing solutions and working with teams that could develop solutions. After COVID, a combination of COVID, Brexit, and various other things, moved on, and I was doing nothing, and then I just got into what I do a bit of driving, a bit of chauffeuring now and again, and that just keeps me busy, and something I really enjoy. get to meet lots of new people, made lots of new friends, and thoroughly enjoy it. So that's basically that part of my life. But in terms of my football life, it's remains stolidly and stoically Newcastle United from
Yeah.
the first game in 1967 all the way through to what was probably my real first taste of success. Bearing in mind I was only 9 when the FACup were there. Victory was like everybody else. I've waited all those years, and this year it's come to fruition eventually.
Definitely has. Steve, I mean, in your spare time, voluntarily, it has to be said, you wanted to make a difference as a football supporter, as a Newcastle United supporter. And, we've discussed many times, about, the various things that you've been involved in, I've been involved in, Mitch has been involved in, along with other such fans, such as Colin Whittle, Bill Corcoran in particular. My question to you is, why did you want to make a difference as a Newcastle United supporter? Because it is voluntary. It does come with, quite a bit of hassle at times, especially when you're giving your opinion, and there is always going to be somebody on the other side of the fence. I mean, it's akin to politics, really, because of the emotional attachment that people have, and because everybody thinks that they're right. So, why did you want to make a difference?
Well, I think, Steve, it's just my nature. I always wanted to make a difference in life. I wanted to make a difference as best I could, and if I had any sort of skills that I could bring to the table, and I'd already proved that being a school governor, bit like yourself. I got into that, and that was obviously all voluntary, and I did that for 11 or 12 years at the local primary school, and I felt as though I was putting something back into the community. And then the football side of it, I think, like the vast majority of lads who got involved and lasses who got involved in this type of situation, it was built out of the frustration of Mike Ashley, and it was obviously the catalyst was the sacking of Kevin Keegan in 2008, which really sort of brought it to the fore for me. Prior to that, I was very much a fanzine reader, loved football conversation, but that was about it. I'd never ever thought of putting me head above the parapet and doing anything else. But it was attending that meeting at the Irish Centre and hearing some great speakers talking about Newcastle and inviting us to other fans to get involved and join them in what they thought was going to be a meaningful campaign. And I think it just kicked off from there. And it's just something I enjoyed. It was in my nature to help, to support, to bring various skills to the table, if you like. But I think after that, it just perpetuated into I just love talking about Newcastle, and I love listening to people talking about Newcastle United. I love meeting people. I love engaging in conversation about football in particular, but Newcastle United in the bigger realm. It's a strange thing. It kind of absorbs you. It kind of gets you wrapped up in, and you have to be careful because it can take over your life, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
But it's strange. It's like a bug. It's like a drug. It gets to you, and you don't want to let it go. It's a difficult one for people to understand. But I think what happens is you gain so much knowledge, you gain an understanding of other opinions. You're able to extrapolate opinions and get your own, and you can see the good and the bad in everything that's said. You hope you're seeing an awful lot good than you are bad, and you hope that some of your knowledge and some of your skills can sort of make a big difference. And I think that's what the vast majority of fans who got involved in NUSC and even now currently in NUST are trying to do. They're trying their best to do as much as they can, not necessarily for themselves, but for the rest of our football community, for the rest of those who absolutely, eat, sleep and drink Newcastle United, but feel as though they haven't got a voice. So that's the way I look at it. And the food bank situation was very much something that just landed on our plate. It was a request that was made as, could you do anything to help? Colin and Bill and myself thought it was going to be for one game, and I think the passion and drive that came from seeing the support we got from fellow fans who also saw this as an opportunity to support their community, to support those in the community who were perhaps struggling. And they saw that as a way of making a difference. And I think once you start something like that, you have to carry on. And that's what we did. And thankfully, we ended up with lots of like-minded people who were able to come along and support it, which means on a match day, sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not. But it means I'm still very much involved in terms of sitting down with Bill and talking, and sitting down with John and the rest of the food bank team that we support, because it's very much a collective effort. All we do is facilitate a collection point on a match day. There are 6 other days a week where work's done at the food bank itself, and we support them. I'm not a trustee, I'm not an employee or anything like that. I'm just a gobby volunteer who can occasionally point them in the right direction, or how else could you put it? Make sure they're not being led down the garden path by people who might think that they are doing the right thing by them. But as football fans, we know the right and the wrong way for to support the West End Food Bank, or as it's now called, the Newcastle Food Bank, because it had outlets in the West End, the East End, and the north of the city as well. It's strange, we never talk about the south of the city, Steve, because of that river that spreads the gap. But there's an awful lot of work done over in Gateshead as well.
Yeah.
They have their own food bank, and I think we could, if anyone lives over on that side of the river, I'm sure they support the Gateshead Food Bank in the same way as those on the north side of the river support the Newcastle one.
How do you think history will reflect or look back on the fan initiatives, Steve, over the years? The NUST, the supporters who gave up their season tickets, the 10,000 or so who walked away during the Ashley era. How do you think history will look back on them? Do you think they'll be mentioned? Do you think they'll be remembered? Do you think people will say, those fans sacrificed a bit, or do you think it'll just be, forgotten?
It's an interesting question, that, Steve. I listen to fans who now have this ability. Well, we all do. We all have this ability to rewrite history, don't we? And we all have this ability to forget. And I do hear people saying, "Oh, so and so, he gave up his ticket and he regrets it now, but I still went." And then I hear the other side of the coin, which is, I don't regret it, because it was my principle and I stood by it, and this type of thing. I think that I don't think anybody's going to be writing books about it. I don't think it's going to be suddenly cropping up in a history of Newcastle United by Paul Janu, where he's going to have 2 or 3 chapters on various groups. I don't think it'll be like that. I don't think you'll have a chapter on all those fans who wrapped their tickets in under Ashley, who did it because they were either sick of what they were watching, sick of what they were seeing from the board, sick of the way they were being treated, and also those who just felt, because at the time there was obviously financial issues as well, those who felt they just couldn't afford it. And I think a lot of people, we forget that a lot of people couldn't afford to go to the match during that sort of period of 2008, 2009, 2010. There was a lot going on in the country. There was a lot of people losing their jobs, a lot of people struggling with their houses and finances because of the massive increase in the cost of mortgages and things like that. And I think some fans might have, and I don't mean this in a flippant way, but some fans might turn around and say, "I gave it up for Ashley," but there was other reasons behind it. And I'd never condemn any fan for giving up their ticket. I would say that 99% of people did it on principle, and I do feel for that in a certain extent, Steve. Which is why when we ever have these conversations about new grounds and extending the ground and building a new stadium, That's why I keep going on about the fact that we can't leave fans behind. There's got to be the way of getting as many people in as possible on a financial throwback to, don't rip people off. Let's not go down the prawn sagwinch brigade too much. Let's remember that if we have got fans who are desperate to get in, it's because they want to get back in. And let's not forget that those are true fans. Everyone who wants a ticket, just treat them as a true fan, but don't try and make it so expensive that even though they want to come back, they can't. If we ended up with a ground of 75, 80, 90,000, I would hope there would be, a huge chunk of tickets that are made available that are reasonably priced. And by reasonably priced, I mean like the away ticket prices, Steve, like the 30 standard. It should be 20s plenty, which was what the campaign was. There was a compromise at 30% with the FSA, which I'm sure that everybody's grateful for. But I'd like to think that we would have the facility to have a huge batch of fans that can get in and be only paying 30 quid, because I think it balances off on the other extreme. And I want as many people as possible in that football ground when it's rebuilt.
It's interesting that with regards to the new ground, Steve, what's your gut instinct on that? Well, it's gone very quiet. Of course, this is a pre-recorded show. There might have been an announcement, but it has gone very quiet. And, do you think that there's, wheels in motion, albeit slowly behind the scenes?
I'm sure there are wheels in motion. How fast those wheels are turning, I'm not too sure, Steve. I look at it and I think if there was going to be something done, it would have been done by now. I think we would have heard. I'm sure there's been all sorts of plans put forward. Should it be a new ground? Should it be a redevelopment of St. James's? I think the more we delve into it, the more we look at it, the more we realise that St. James's Park cannot be developed to the numbers that we would all want. I mean, everybody talks about the logistics of, turning the pitch around or moving the ground this way and that way. There's ways and means, I suppose, but we forget that for 8 months of the year we've got to be playing there as well, and it only gives 4 months of development work, and then you're back into the season again and you're playing. So I just don't think it's feasible to redevelop St. James's Park in any way that will increase the capacity to the sort of capacity the likes of the chairman and various other people probably want. And I think after winning the cup, I think there's every possibility that there's been a change in stance, a change in position on what exactly they want as a ground. I still think if it'll be a new ground, I would hope that it is still going to be Leazes Park, but I've just got this strange feeling in my bones that is the appetite there in the council to give Newcastle United what they want in terms of a stadium slap bang in the middle of the city, or are there people there who think what we've got is enough and will do everything they can to hold the football club back, simply because they don't want to have the loss of a green park. I worry because that for me, I don't know whether there's the strength in the council to stand up and give us what we want. I'm not hearing any councillors coming out behind and talking about development. I'm not hearing the regional mayor talking about it. I'm not hearing the council leaders. I'm not hearing that sort of support from local MPs. I don't think any of them have spoken in turn about Newcastle United's potential new ground and getting behind the idea. And that worries me. I think, if I'm being truthful, I think we could end up in a situation like we had with Sir John Hall back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, I can see, well, I don't think it'll be Al Ramayan, but I can see Al Ramayan standing on the steps of Newcastle United shouting, "Okay, if you don't want it, then we'll go on to Gateshead." Honestly, the fact that there doesn't seem to be anything coming out backing maybe it's because the club hasn't said anything yet. Maybe it's because it's all been speculative in the newspapers, but I still think we would have heard, if there were plans afoot, that, you know, would have heard our local MPs saying, I think Newcastle United should be getting a new ground. And I think the local council would have been coming out. Instead, we're getting, well, if they come to where we'll let them know and all this type of thing. And I just find it bluster and hogwash at times, Steve. It boils mine at times listening to them, trying to be sort of treating it as a political football, because I think that's what it'll end up being.
Okay, interesting stuff. We'll hold it there. We'll have a quick ad break. Back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk. Email info@mrvickys.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. Don't forget as well, our fanzine will continue next season, and we are doing it for Age UK Dementia in North Tyneside, which means that 4 issues of the fanzine will come out again. All profits, all proceeds going to the charity, and it's £25 to get your subscription. We've knocked £2.50 off the price, so it's £25. That includes postage for UK subscribers. There is an international rate on there as well. You just need to click on the website, nufcmatters.co.uk. £4,000 we raised last year for Dementia Matters. Would love to do the same again. It'll be limited to 200 issues. Your last issue, those of you who subscribed last season, will be hitting your mats back end of June, probably the start of July. We have just been waiting for a few of the lads to get their final pieces in. So looking forward to that coming out as well. But thank you to everybody who's contributed. And Jeff Carter from the Fans Forum is contributing now. Yes, interesting to see the least is what I would say about Jeff's articles. And because it is summer, we do tend to do something slightly different. We've got Steve on tonight, but we did do a live with Ask Mitch. If you haven't had time to watch it, give it a watch. Of course, we had a season review from Saudi with our good friend Al Walid, and there's also one which will be up there soon with Keith Patterson and Ben Jacobs' transfer show as well is coming up as well. So a few different shows for you in the summer. We have a few people have a little bit of time off, but back to you, Steve.
Yep.
I was going through a few old fanzines a few months ago that I'd written the introductions to some of the number 9 fanzines, where
Wow.
you've got to bear in mind, that goes back into the 90s. And one of my intros was, saying that the bubble would eventually burst in football. Now I'm glad I didn't put a time scale on it, because if I predicted that it was going to be the noughties, I couldn't have been any further wrong, because here we are now in the noughties. It still hasn't burst, and we are in a position now where footballers are now getting paid 250,000, 350,000 pound a week. In the Premier League, we never thought we'd see the day. We're talking about 100 million pound plus players, being transferred now. We don't bat an eyelid at Harry Kane going across to Germany for that kind of price. Automatically now, Isak has 2 good seasons in the Premier League, and we're talking about 150 million for Isak. So, the bubble clearly hasn't burst. But, do you think it will burst, Steve? Well, I mean, teams like Manchester United, Chelsea seem to be finding a way around PSR. Man United's, almost $1 billion in debt. They could be close to $1 billion in debt in the next couple of years. It's bizarre, but the bubble doesn't seem to be burst. Will it ever burst, Steve? Do you think?
It's an interesting question, that, Steve. It depends what you mean by burst, doesn't it? I mean, for a lot of fans, it burst probably 15 years ago. When it changed, the game changed. It's not the game that it was in terms of the way that we remember it, purely because it's become so expensive to attend. And I think for a lot of people, it burst probably round about the sort of early 2000s. It started to change then, and then I think the big change came. I think there was a big TV deal around about 2010, 2011. And then you started to get Liverpool paying ridiculous money for the likes of Andy Carroll, giving us £30 million for a player that probably the season before would have gone for 5, if at all. In fact, I don't think they would have even looked at him, but for some reason they did. But that's because somebody else came in and offered them 50 for Torres, and that was when it started, really. It's an entertainment now. It's not a sport. It's an entertainment. It's a business. The days of the local butcher down in Burnley running his football club doesn't happen. It's now run by, it's now owned by an American sort of conglomerate or venture capital company. And you look at the way that they've stepped in, and the only reason we now have 12 American owners in the Premier League is because they all think there's money to be made. In the past, you would never, ever have an owner coming in to make money. They did it back in the 70s and 80s. They did it for the love of their football club. I suppose Michael Knighton was the one that suddenly, when he tried to buy Manchester United for 10 million quid, and people, the family was seriously thinking about selling up. And then, of course, the deal fell through. And that was the point where I think the TV companies realized there was money in football. The problem is, it's always the fans that get exploited at the end of the day. The player. What you've got a ridiculous situation, I think, of Aston Villa, where 95% of their turnover is going in salaries to footballers. That's unsustainable. PSR is supposed to be the leveler, but they'd let those cats out of the bag, those top 6, 7 clubs, they let them out of the bag and allowed them to build up that sort of level of debt and to control the game in the manner that they have, because they were always winning competitions. They allowed them to move on, and now I think the likes of Newcastle United, Aston Villa, rather, that's where we're now struggling, because suddenly they started bringing in these rules and regulations around financial fair play and PSR. it is biting some of the Premier League clubs on the backside, or so we're told, one season. But then you hear Man United already going out and spending nearly 200 million. Chelsea throwing money at players and bought another player today. So again, crazy money for a 19-year-old. I read somewhere that they've got like 70 odd players on their books. It's, they've got more players out on loan than they have in their Premier League squad. It is a farm. It is a football farm. Will it burst? I don't know. I think what will happen next is that the clubs will realise that the TV revenue that they're getting from Sky or BT or TNT Sports or Discovery, they'll suddenly realise that, what, we could do this. We could make even more money, and I think they'll eventually, in 4 or 5 years' time, be producing their own TV. I think they'll be running their own television channels, and I think they'll be selling their own rights to all their own games. I think that's the next split. At the minute, we have that sort of 130 million that everybody gets, regardless from the collective bargaining TV deal. I think the greedy 6 or 7 will suddenly realise with the amount of international fans that they don't need that. Then they would rather go their own, and to hell with everybody else. And I think that's the next split that we'll have in the Premier League. I can see the Premier League and the Championship merging. I could see that as a potential. I could see them having 2 divisions. It annoys me that they're bringing in a regulator, or talking to bring in a regulator, when maybe I'm sounding a bit like Simon Jordan in this respect, when that was the role of the FA. The FA for me was always the regulator, but they threw that chance away. They did away with that when they allowed the Premier League, and even then they forgot that they had the golden share, so they could have stifled anything that the Premier League wanted to do, but they never have. Cowards in my book. They simply concentrate now on the England team and St George's Park, and that's all they're interested in. A little bit of grassroots, and they'll tell you that they're putting a hell of a lot of money in on grassroots, but it's nowhere near enough if we want to sustain the game in the way that we remember it and the way that we want it to be played with youngsters. Kids, I mean, there used to be changing rooms at fields. Now they don't even have that. Now kids are turning up changed. They're turning up in their boots and they're going home in their boots, and the footballs and the nets are being kept in a porta cabin or a container at the end of a field. You haven't got the facilities that used to exist. And as for the 4 and 5G pitches, it's, to me, it's paying lip service in comparison to what happens on the continent. And I think it's the same with the coaching at grassroots level. I think they play lip service to it. I think you look at the number of coaches that are developed in the likes of Spain, Portugal, etc., and then you look at the number of coaches that we have, and how difficult they make it for you to become a football coach. They make it so expensive. There's no fund. If you want to be a coach, you're talking, to get your badges, you're talking like thousands of pounds. There's no fund that turns around and say, "Oh, we'll pay for that." That doesn't exist. It's a shame. I did some coaching badges and junior badges and things back in the day, because we were helping out running a school football team, another little bit of voluntary work that me and pal Paul used to do. And we did the coaching. It was, believe it or not, it was John Carver who did some of the coaching sessions with us. And we had to go to, believe it or not, we didn't go to any fancy coaching place. We went to the old Benwell. It was still there. The hut was still there. I mean, it's now a decent little sporting venue, but at the time it was still the tatty gym. It hadn't no redevelopment done on it at all. And we were still walking through puddles that were like that deep to get through into the gym and stuff like that. But we did our sessions in there with Northumberland FA. Thoroughly enjoyed them. They were great sessions, and that type of thing. But not the sort of facilities that you would get if you signed up and you were doing your coaching badges in Spain. I don't think, Stephen. We look back and okay, they lost in the Nations Cup, but prior to that, I think that was their first defeat since 2021 at international level. They'd won the Euros, they won the World Cup, they won the previous Nations League, and they got into the final of the most recent Nations League. And I think that tells you an awful lot about the depth and quality of Spanish football, doesn't it?
Yeah, certainly does. Looking back, well, I'm saying looking back, looking at the takeover, Steve, it seems like many, many years ago now. But you and I, we're at the coalface of that takeover for vast amounts of time. And, along with Mitch, and other people who will remain nameless, helped us massively in helping a man, Dad, facilitate, getting various info, getting various introductions, etc. But looking at it now, we're here now in, we're 4 years, coming into 4 years into it in October. Is it everything you expected it to be, this takeover?
They expected me, I'd demand that they're still there, and they're not. I didn't think we'd go through as many sporting directors as we have. Now heading for a third in 4 years. I thought we would have had a chief executive who would lasted longer than the one that we've got, and we're now looking for a second one. I thought we'd have heard an awful lot more from PIF. To be perfectly honest, Steve, I thought there would have been representation from PIF inside St James's Park, but coming out in terms of interacting with supporters. I think there's a vacuum there, and I think there's also a vacuum with sort of Jamie Rubin. Obviously, his charitable foundation supports the food bank and matches everything that supporters put in on a match day, which is fantastic. But other than that, I don't know what day-to-day involvement or week-to-week involvement Jimmy has, if anything. I know he's got one or two people in at Newcastle now who previously worked for him. I'm sure there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, but it's not like having, and love him or hate him, it's not like when we had a Freddie Fletcher who was a Rottweiler. It's not like when we had a chairman like Sir John, or a family like the Shepherds, who as fans were always in the newspapers, whether it was good or bad, and everybody will have their own opinion on it. But I think I think it's different now, isn't it, Steve? It's totally different in terms of we look back and we think of the Keegan era and Kevin was always talking. Now all we have is the press conference on before the match, and we have the post-match press conference. Very much stage managed, I feel, very controlled. We all like it when we hear Eddie talking, but it is very sort of controlled and managed. But it's like that at all clubs now, and I think that's simply because instead of being something that they want to do, it's something that they have to do. Other things that Newcastle United could do better, of course, there are. There are always things you learn by your mistakes, and you change things and you evolve. Losing Paul Mitchell's a massive thing, because they made such a song and dance over getting him after making a song and dance over getting Dan Ashworth. Losing Dan Ashworth and him going on gardening leave for 5 months, and yet lose Paul Mitchell because he said he wants to leave and he's gone within a month. I find all that rather odd, to be perfectly honest. Something doesn't sit right there, but that's just me. I'm very much the pessimist when it comes to that, and I tend to analyze words that people come out with rather than actions. And I wonder whether there's something not right there. To me, it doesn't taste right, but I may be totally wrong. But it's all about opinions, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, big decisions to be made on both a new sporting director, if we take one, and a new CEO. and it'll be interesting to see what sort of personalities they go for, because I think Newcastle United is a football club that thrives on personality.
Yeah.
It doesn't thrive on things happening and nobody knowing. I think it thrives. It's a hotbed. We all scream for info, and now under social media, we scream for it. And if you leave a vacuum, social media will very, very quickly fill it, and they'll fill it with things that you don't want, and they'll fill it with things you haven't said rather than things that you're saying. And I think that, yes, you've got to be careful, but at the same time, I think you've got to be more out there, more in my face, and try not to like come around as so secretive. It's like almost a it, I don't know how to put it. It's like there are some people within that football club. It's like, it's my club, not your club. It's not like it's our club. It's like, you'll do what we tell you, rather than dialogue. And I think they're on a hiding to nothing, aren't they? Because if they weren't having their meetings and they weren't having their get-togethers in the the hand-picked numbers that they do, they would be condemned. But then again, we just eat info. We just eat the football club. We just listen to every single word, and we digest every single word that comes out. And I think that the people in the football club sometimes need to wake up and realize this football club is an awful lot bigger than you think it is.
Yeah, it's a good point. Why do you think, Steve, that PIF don't come out and speak? I felt that there would have been more hands-on as time went on, but at this moment in time, they still maintain that very distant kind of, relationship. We can almost set our clocks by Al Ramayan's, appearance at the club. First game of the season, last game of the season. And if he's here for some other reason, he pops in and maybe he's one in the middle. But, that's it. We do know there's people on the ground who are working for the club, but we hear nothing from them. Why do you think that is?
I think there was, in the early stages, there was a reliance or a feeling that Amanda in particular was very much the face of Newcastle United. And I think that when she left, I don't think they've filled the void. I don't think that they've grasped how important her role was and how important the fans saw her. And in terms of our input, she was very much on the ground. She was very much the sort of the face, if you like, of PIF, as well as the face of Newcastle United, because she represented them. Yes, she was our own person on the board, and she had our own seat. And yes, she was taking direction, but I think she did it really, really well. And I think that there's a void being left, and I just don't think they've quite grasped filling it yet. And maybe they see themselves as more strategic. Maybe they're employing people that they think have all the qualities and attributes to operate on a day-to-day. That means that they don't have to be at the coalface, if you like. But I think that's fine if you're the chairman and you're running a public investment fund of the size of the PIF. But in terms of the other people that he's brought in from within PIF to do and take on roles within Newcastle, I wonder whether they prefer to stay in the background because it's the nature of the secretness of how a public investment company operates or fund, or whether it's they just don't get it. They just feel as though maybe treat Newcastle United as just another one of many, many companies that we're involved in, and we don't have a day-to-day involvement in. But I think with Newcastle United, with any football club, you really do have to have your ear to the ground, and you do have to be, because it's such a reactionary thing, Steve. The football club, it's things can change in an instant. They change off the back of a bad result. They change off the back of an incident that involves a coach or a player or a supporter. And it's a very, very volatile thing. and it needs instant responses sometimes, and it needs the right responses. It needs sensible responses. It doesn't need knee-jerk reactions. But to get to the position where you're not making those knee-jerk reactions, you've got to understand the football club. You've got to understand what's around the football club, and you've got to understand the impact, the cause and effect of whatever you're doing, the cause and effect of what's happened and how you can react and this type of thing. And I feel as though sometimes that little gap that gets created, if it's not filled very, very quickly, it suddenly ends up with a life of its own. And it's whether or not they feel as though they've got the right people involved, and whether those are genuinely the right people, there for the right reasons, there to purely run Newcastle United the same way as they might run Ipswich Town or Bournemouth or Sunderland or Middlesbrough, or are they going to run Newcastle United as what Newcastle United really is? The hub of not just the city but the region. The top dogs in the region, the top club with an appetite for success like you've never known, an appetite that's now been fed. But are you still going to be putting that meat on the table for them, or are you going to coast for a while? It's some people, I think there's certain people in Newcastle United who have grasped it, Steve. There's no doubt about that. But I think there are other people that might just feel as though, oh well, yeah, now we'll move on and we'll try something else. So much to be built on.
100%.
Such a journey. Sorry.
100%. Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. And that's why I wanted to do these shows in particular, because it gives, so often on the Amigos and, Geordie's here, Geordie's there, whatever shows we do, we don't often get a chance to talk and hear full length answers, because we can all talk for England on this show, but sometimes it's just nice to be able to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, a good example, Steve, is I've produced a piece for the fanzine, and people will be able to read it in a couple of weeks when it comes out. And I point out in my article, without giving too much away, that maybe it's time for us fans to see people in Newcastle United grow a bit of a backbone.
Yeah.
At the moment, we've sat back and we've taken everything on the chin, haven't we? Everything at the Premier League or that clubs within the Premier League have tried to throw at us. We seem to have just, okay, then we'll have that. We'll take that. Maybe it's now time to get the gloves off and go, no, we're not going to put up with that. We're just as big as you, if not bigger. We've got just as much a voice. We want our opinions to be heard, and we want to be heard properly, and we want to be treated properly. And we're not going to stand for being pushed around, because I think we have been pushed around, and I think Amanda did her best to make sure we weren't. But it's how much she was backed within the football club when she was trying that. And I know that at the time it was very much, we were finding our feet in terms of a football club within the Premier League as being viewed all of a sudden as the interlopers, and we didn't want to put anyone's nose out of a joint. But I think it's now time, after 4 years, that we start to come out punching, and we start to say, we're not going to roll these punches anymore. We're going to start sticking them some back on you, and we start to fight back in the boardroom, in the executive boardroom, with decisions that are being made that are having a direct impact on us. And Man City are doing it now, and they've done it because they've had to. They've been forced into it. I think it's time for Newcastle United to be a little bit more brave and start to stand up for themselves.
Steve, been a fascinating Q&A. That hour, but same as you, it's gone so quickly. Thanks for doing it. We might get another one in before the season starts. But for now, Steve, thanks very much, mate. Look forward to seeing you on the Amigos.
Really enjoyed it, Steve. Take care.